Bloomberg News national political reporter Sahil Kapur joins us for a look at the U.S. Mexico tariff agreement and other developments. Good morning.
Good morning.
So give us some sense of what led to this agreement. Obviously, there was some Republican pressure from lawmakers there on the president. Also, some reports about the economy that weren't looking so good. But what did lead to this?
I think those two things put a lot of pressure on the president to come to a deal. The economy would have taken a major hit. U.S. consumers and businesses would have ended up paying more if these tariffs went into effect. And that would have deprived the president of his best political weapon heading into a re-election year if the economy went south. So I think there was a lot of pressure on him to come to a deal.
He hasn't been leaning on that good economy, though, right now. But it seemed to resonate regardless?
Well, it certainly resonates with voters. I think voters cite the economy as the single biggest reason.
Right, but I mean not for him, that he hasn't leaned on it at this point.
Right. He's leaned heavily on immigration, and it remains to be seen whether this is going to be a meaningful shift in how Mexico deals with migrants and a meaningful change in migrants coming up to the border, or whether this is more of a fig leaf for him to be able to claim a victory.
Clearly playing hardball with Mexico work. Could this strategy work with China?
China is a much tougher situation because his ask of China is essentially restructuring its economy by cracking down on things like intellectual property theft, predatory practices that are essential to China's economic model. So the prospect of tariffs, about 25% on $300 billion in Chinese goods, still looms.
Sahil, the president returned home after this 5-day overseas trip to another battle with Nancy Pelosi. It's looking increasingly difficult for her to sort of hold the line on impeachment inside her own party, isn't it?
It is. There's a growing conviction among progressives that the president has committed impeachable offenses and that the House should move to that, to at least open an inquiry about impeachment, if not move to a vote. But Nancy Pelosi, I think, is playing this very, very cautiously. She's reading the same polls that we are, that the public is not there yet, and she doesn't want to be seen as overreaching to the detriment of her vulnerable members.
And impeachment isn't even a slam dunk within the Democratic Party in the House, is it?
It's not. There are between 40 and 50 Democrats who have come out for it in the House. There are probably more of them who support it quietly, but it's not clear that there are 218 votes to get there at this point.
Any chance that we know when Robert Mueller might testify?
There are conversations happening among Democrats about that, but they are wary of getting into a process fight about will he or won't he. They want to focus on the substance of the report. They want to focus on the investigations going after the president's tax returns, going after his financial records through banks, and they're fighting these battles in court at this point.
If we look ahead to the 2020 election, and certainly the Democratic candidates out there, an interesting week for Joe Biden and that reversal that he had on the Hyde Amendment. What can you say just about the week he had and why we saw that reversal?
It was certainly a tough week for Joe Biden on two fronts. The first tough week, I would say, of his campaign about 6 weeks in. He released a climate change plan earlier in the week that ended up lifting passages from other sources. Charges of plagiarism followed that, and his campaign said it was inadvertent. They corrected that. Later in the week, he had an abrupt reversal on the Hyde Amendment, which is the 1976 provision routinely put in appropriations bills that prevents federal money on programs like Medicaid from being used to cover abortions. There's been a major shift in the Democratic Party in the direction of repealing that amendment, and Joe Biden came out in favor of repealing that amendment after initially saying in the week that he was for the Hyde Amendment.
Do you know why?
Enormous amounts of pressure from the reproductive rights community, from progressive activists to turn the page on this. They say it only harms women without means, women of color, poor women.
Well, Sahil Kapur, we thank you for all of the context you gave us to right now.